Hello and welcome. You're listening to the Healthy Moving Podcast, the show all about helping you to exercise less, but move more so you will feel better. I am your healthy moving enthusiast, Jen Hoffman from healthymoving.com. You know, there's nothing more frustrating than working hard on something only to have someone else come along and sabotage your efforts. Well, when it comes to our health and wellness, we are often our own saboteurs. And I'm not even talking about those times you indulge in a giant bowl of ice cream right after a workout. This show is the second in a special series called The Building Blocks, where we look at the things that we're doing all day long that sabotage our health, even if we regularly work out. A few weeks ago, we kicked off the series looking at core health. That's episode 16 if you want to go back and catch it. And today, I'm going there, to the place we are often a little uncomfortable chatting about, the pelvic floor. But here's the thing, 80% of the population will have some sort of pelvic floor dysfunction in their lifetime. So this is an important topic. And I think it can help without making you too uncomfortable in the process. I remember the first time I heard of one form of pelvic floor dysfunction. My dear friend, to protect the innocent, let's call her Marie, she started having kids when I was just a fresh out of college single girl. We were chatting one day about our favorite workouts, and she mentioned to me that since the birth of her daughter, she could no longer exercise without leaking. I remember I asked mortified, "You mean you pee your pants?" She laughed and said, "I prefer to call it leaking, Jen." Of course, now I'm far less shocked when I receive emails from students and listeners who are battling some form of pelvic floor dysfunction. I'm not surprised anymore because it's just so common. Like I said, 80% of the population, and that includes men and women who've never had children, will experience some of the following symptoms in their lifetime. Things like inconvenient incontinence or organ prolapse, even radiating nerve pain or sacroiliac joint pain. Things like decreased sexual function, or for laboring moms, decreased birthing space. Most people who email me are looking for a pelvic floor exercise protocol. They want to know if healthy moving can help, and it most certainly can. But it isn't as simple as, do these 6 exercises 3 times a day for 8 weeks, and then you'll be cured. Our pelvic floor health, just like the rest of our body, is shaped by how we move and how we position our body when we're not moving all the time. You can do pelvic floor exercises every day, but if you aren't mindful of how you move and sit and stand all day long, you're likely undoing all of that effort. So what exactly do you need to be mindful of throughout the day? Your pelvic alignment, or the position of your pelvis as you move and sit and stand. My absolute favorite thing about alignment is that in any part of the body, when we're in optimal alignment, our muscles fire and innervate all day long without us having to do any special exercises. Of course, this is true for the pelvic floor muscles as well. When you're standing or sitting, your pelvis is in optimal alignment when your ASIS, remember those are the anterior superior iliac spines, or those 2 bony prominences that you can feel at the front of your pelvis. When those bones and the pubic bones are in a vertical plane, you're in neutral pelvis. But most people in our modern culture spend the vast majority of their time with a posterior tilted pelvis, meaning the top of the pelvis is tilting back while the bottom is moving forward. This creates a problem for the pelvic floor, and for the back and other places as well, but today we're chatting pelvic floor. It makes the pelvic floor muscles positionally unable to respond to the weight of the pelvic and abdominal organs. Remember, gravity is pulling them down all the time. We need the pelvic floor to provide lift back up for those. But it's only when the pelvis is in neutral that the pelvic floor muscles are positioned to give that perfect amount of lift needed to support those organs. So strengthening the pelvic floor isn't really about working directly on the pelvic floor muscles with things that we often think of like Kegels, but instead on looking at everything that shapes the bones and the alignment of your pelvis. So yes, there are quite a few things about how you move that shape your pelvic alignment. But let's start with the biggie today. And I need you to grab your cell phone charger for this one. Because we spend so much time sitting in chairs, and even when we are walking around, it's almost exclusively on artificially flattened surfaces in shoes that have an elevated heel. We're in this habit of holding ourselves up with the muscles at the front of the pelvis and thighs, like the psoas and quads and other hip flexors. This causes us to thrust the pelvis forward. We should be holding ourselves upright with our posterior muscles, which, along with improving the health of our backs and knees and hips, also happen to play a significant role in our pelvic floor health. So let's test your own pelvic thrusting habits. We're going to use your cell phone charger as a plumb line. Hold the small end of your charger on the side of your pelvis, right in the middle, so that the cord and the plug hang down along the outside of your leg. Now look at where that plug ends. Is it in front of your ankle? If so, slowly begin to back your hips up in space until your leg is more vertical and that plug comes directly beside your malleoli, the ankle bone. Can you feel your glutes and hamstrings come to life as you do that? Those posterior muscles back there, they play a huge role in getting your pelvic floor to the optimal position. If your glutes and hamstrings are really weak right now, you may not be able to come all the way back to a vertical leg today. But just play with this slowly over the next few days or weeks, however long it takes to gradually build the strength you need to maintain that vertical leg. I have a video for you on this plumb line test. I know it can be helpful to see it. You can grab that video by texting pelvic floor, that's one word with no space, pelvic floor, to 33444. Of course, there are lots of other things that shape your pelvic alignment and in turn your pelvic floor health. If you're battling any type of pelvic floor dysfunction and you'd like to do a deep dive with me on this topic, I have a brand new pelvic floor course releasing this week. It includes a 2-hour workshop, 3 levels of daily movement challenges, and even a downloadable PDF movement plan. We'll restore pelvic floor and, incidentally, your whole body health through deep work on the back of the legs, the glutes, the psoas, the hip adductors and abductors. It's going to be fun and I promise really easy to incorporate into your very busy life. To get the workshop details, just text pelvic floor to 33444 or you can head to healthymoving.com/pelvic floor. And as a special bonus, if you purchase the course before this Sunday, May 10th, you'll be entered to win a 50-minute private Skype session with me. Details on that are all on the registration page. Now that wasn't so bad, was it? Not nearly as uncomfortable as leaking every time you sneeze, right? Okay, I'll be back next week with a regular show, but I'll have another episode in this building block series for you in just a few weeks. And in the meantime, I would love your feedback on the Healthy Moving podcast. Head over to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and review. I really appreciate it. And of course, if you have a question you'd like me to answer in a future episode, you can call me at 201-580-MOVE or just click the Leave Me a Message link in the show notes at healthymovingpodcast.com. As my way of saying thanks, if I use your question in a future episode, I'll send you a little something in the mail just to say thanks. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, friends, Keep moving.